Well, good day and welcome to our live stream from Portals of Perception. Today we're here to talk about a new work from Aviv Shahar called Portals into the Soul. And we just today published the first chapter on the website portalsofperception.org. That chapter is called Portals into the Soul, a threefold orchestration, which brings to light some very fascinating ideas. One of the things we can say about this work is that it is not a unifying theory of the soul, but it is a work in progress. It's a way to come closer to ourselves and through an understanding of the soul. So I would say welcome to Kyriaki in Greece, Patrick in Seattle, Lisa in Austin, I think, right?
Not at the moment, but yes, that's where I live.
Aviv in Florida today. And I'm Peter, I'm in Tennessee. So welcome to all. We're happy to have you. One of the things that I wonder is, what is the soul? What does it do? And there's so many ideas about this, but one thing we might be able to say is that it's a part of us. We each have one. And so it should be knowable. If we have a soul, it should in some way be knowable by us, just like we have a hand and a foot and we can know that in a certain way. So with that, I would bring on Aviv, who is writing this work, and have him offer something into this in terms of how we can use this knowledge, how we can, it seems like a very deep way to internalize, have an internal relationship with ourselves. So Aviv, what can you offer with this?
Thank you, Peter. So you took us right there at the beginning into the deep end. What is the soul and how to build relationship with the soul? Perhaps I can just for a moment take a step back and say, first, it's exciting to be here in this first test drive live with YouTube. We're still discovering the technology. Second, as you said, this is a work that's emerging at this time. It's an ongoing inquiry. It's what I describe as permanent line inquiry. Permanent line contemplation, by which I mean, when I say permanent line inquiry or permanent line contemplation, is something you can be with, abide with for many years, for decades, such as those very inquiries, which is like, what is the soul? And how can you come into contact with the soul, and what might be some ways to appreciate the fact that you showed up in this body and living experience, and we're proposing that you have a companion, which is your soul. So perhaps I can offer just a sense of where the work is at this time, how it is evolving. Then I can turn around and ask you, each one of you, to offer a thought, an insight, or a question, an inquiry, if you prefer, and then we'll play live. This is an unrehearsed exploration, and then I will, inside it, Peter, address your provocative and interesting question, which is, so what might be a way to use and work with this content, and what are some possible path into it. So if you choose to write a book, you may be, perhaps you'd go into some secluded place for a month or for a year or for 10 years, and then you'll come out and you have a book. But we decided to run a different experiment, which is to publish this on the move. And it makes it a very different kind of an experience for me, because you don't actually do the work in isolation. You do the work inside something that has an emergent quality and a collective search, and are mindful of that. So we, as you said, Peter, we just published in the last hour the chapter 1. We published the preamble last month, and chapter 2 has been written and is in production, because we're trying to create a multi-faceted experience whereby you can read the content on the webpage. You can also close your eyes and listen to the recording. You can also listen to the audio and follow the script. And fourthly, you can actually watch the video that our friend Paul Stone produced with those visuals, and use those different approaches to enter a meditative, contemplative way of metabolizing, internalizing, processing the content. So that's by way of trying to create a multifaceted experience. And so chapter 2 is in production now. Chapter 3 and 4 are in draft forms. And what I will say, well, I think today we mostly want to focus on chapter 1. My experience so far, and which is why it's different to writing a book in the more traditional way, with which I have an experience, is that chapter 2 and chapter 3, they are each very different in nature to chapter 1. It's almost as though they are sourced in terms of the range of ideas and what is integrated into the exploration. It's almost as though they come from a different zip code. They come from a different zip code in my own contemplative inquiry. So I'm recognizing that I'm dealing with something that's alive, that has its own momentum and momentous flow. And I'm partly tracking where it's going, partly writing. So it's not as though I am approaching this as you said, Peter, as a consolidation of all that was said in history about the soul. And this much has been offered in the preamble, that this was not going to be a theory or a new meta theory about the soul. It is more an endeavor to engage with those important inquiries, important conversations, important contemplations inside the unique context of this time. In other words, deeply into the third decade of the 21st century. It will be different to try to endeavor a live exploration into the soul even 20 or 30 years ago, let alone 100 or 200 years ago. So, and perhaps there may be a way to speak to that in a little bit. So, but this is simply offering transparency of how the work is evolving. And let me, before we go deeper, or I go deeper into any particular aspect or question, let's see if any one of you, Peter first, is there anything you'd like to further speak to? And then let's hear from Patrick, Kiriki, and Lisa, and see where the conversation wants to go.
Yeah, thank you, Aviv, for that entryway. One of the things I was thinking before we came on today was about this phrase, lost soul. And when you hear that about someone, or maybe say that about someone, it's a pretty devastating kind of comment. But if you feel lost and unsettled, it can be very stress-producing. And something in the work that you've put forward so far in the preamble and in the chapter 1, it has a feeling to it, to me, that if we have a better sense and understanding and connection to our own soul by looking into this work, that we can ground ourselves and bring a certain kind of settlement to our lives in the way of finding ourselves and finding a direction. So yeah, just, in thinking about the soul and these phrases we use, it's that's what I would put in at the moment about that.
Yeah, that's great. We have not addressed yet the conundrum of a lost soul, and through the lens of chapter 1, where we describe the soul as a threefold orchestration system. You could say threefold operating system or orchestrating system. One way to perhaps appreciate the idea of a lost soul is in a sense of having been separated or not tethered or not completely in touch with the higher aspect or the third propulsion or the third brief that we suggest is inherent and is part of the cosmology of a soul, because we're describing the first life of the soul as the one that protects you, keeps you alive. And the second life of the soul is the one that forever guides you to improve conditions and to learn about the situation you're in. And there is the third dimension, third life, third nature of the soul brief, which we're describing as the champion of higher purpose, which has about it the sense of seeking this bigger inquiry of why am I here as a human being, and why did I show up in this life, and what's it all about, and many other ways to explore that question. And what we're suggesting is that inquiry, that nudge, that propulsion is inherent and is a live wire, so to speak, a live nudge in the soul. And one way you describe, in the way we generally use the term lost soul, is a person that's wandering around and is not either in touch with their sense of meaning or purpose or what life is about, and perhaps even not in touch with the option, the possibility of inquiring into that premise. So I would offer that as a starter consideration into what is the reason for sometimes there is tremendous wisdom in the language, because there are various expressions that will appear in the language. And yeah, lost soul doesn't mean that your soul got lost. Your soul is never lost. It's always there with you. It's just that because of life conditions and experience and the way you have used your opportunities and often the circumstances that were forced upon you, you may be less in touch with the soul. And that's the space we go deeply into in chapter 2. So we'll keep it for now as a separate conversation. We will come back to that later. So how about that, Peter, as a starter consideration about lost soul?
Yeah, that's excellent. Really puts it in perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll jump in. I happen to be on the West Coast in Los Angeles, so I woke up at 6 a.m. this morning to listen to chapter 1. It was great. Had a cup of tea, chapter 1. And with what you just said, Aviv, about the 3 aspects or the 3 levels of the soul, it makes me realize that the soul is involved in every part of our being. So it's it's not just the soul is the automatic bit. It's so much more. And for myself, as I know all of you, we've been talking about the soul or trying to explore the soul for many years. This isn't something that we just woke up this morning and said, oh, let's think about the soul. And yet, with all the years of discovery, there's still so much mystery and so much to uncover. So one phrase that I'd like to offer in today is the idea of soul instruction, because I've been thinking about that for many, many years, to be able to connect and to instruct the soul, and in a way have the soul instruct my life so that there's a true connection and a throughoutness in everything I do and how I think about life. So I just put that in as a starter.
Thank you, Lisa. So you're really offering 2 ideas there. One, that you can speak to your soul, and second, that you can listen to your soul instructions to you. And in some ways, you've just skipped all the way to chapter 7, which has not been written yet, which is completely all right, because we're going to approach it slowly and in a meandering way. But the important instinct and intuition you're offering is that, yes, we can be better in listening to the instruction of the inner lives, the soul and the other inner lives that we will over time bring into the conversation. And that there are a variety of ways and practices that we can cultivate to improve that, including, as you offered, speaking to your soul. So
Great.
Very nice.
Great. And just one other thing to say to people who are joining us, we can't see you. If you put a little comment, hi, we're here, we'll know who's with us. I think, Peter, you may be able to see everyone, but we don't know who's there. So pop us a little note, ask us a question, make a comment, and just say hi so we know that you're with us. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, I would also welcome everyone also to add their comment, and excellent insights, Lisa. I'm also wondering, what is this voice that appears in moments maybe of desperation or of loneliness, or sometimes when we hit rock bottom and there's suddenly something that pulls us to the light in a way. Well, I'm very happy today, and that we also have Aviv with us. And I was listening again to the preamble today as well. And yeah, I recognize what you refer to as a connective current that nudged you that Christmas Eve, Aviv. And I must say that on the other end as well, so from the end of the receiver, that indeed there is a connective current in these writings and in these videos that offers a lot of different insights. And especially also with chapter 1 today, where we have the three functions of the soul, that the soul is a functionary. It's not just something woo-woo, something far away that we meet when we die and so on, which may also be the case, but it has a specific function, and no one told us about this at school, let's say, or our parents, or not even the priests in our church. They don't know this in a way. So I was thinking about the first 2 aspects of the soul, the guardian of life and the steward of learning, let alone the champion of higher purposes. And I was thinking that today, how important is this knowledge today, because we have so many suicides. We have so many young people that they are in depression. So where is this guardian of life? You wonder. And the steward of learning also, we see dangers today because this natural fountain of learning and wanting to improve our conditions, it's maybe also hijacked by the social media and all that. And I'm wondering how we can reactivate even these two very important functions. The function of the guardian of life that wants to keep us alive, and the steward of learning. And I was wondering whether you can elaborate a bit in this, because you also maybe hint that if we keep alive this life of the steward of learning, we'll be rejuvenated. Whilst if we stop learning, the force of life diminishes. So I find this fascinating and was wondering whether you can elaborate a bit on that.
You're muted, Aviv.
Thank you, Peter. So yeah, Kira, we should try to offer a comment to that. Let me first acknowledge the comment from Transcendent Minds podcast, who writes, soul as essence information enables the convergence of dynamic algorithms that govern decision-making, learning, alignment, and adaptation. Beautiful formulation of language, and is very much in the nature of what we're describing in chapter 1, where we describe the soul as an intelligence loom that mediates and navigates and regulates the experience inside the human model in this planetary ecology. So, Kiraki, you in some way, before even answering directly what might be a way to revitalize that sense, I'd take a step back, and you'll hear me say that again, take a step back, because I always like to see the broader context. And now endeavor to answer the question, so how can you work with this content? The different ways to journey into this content with us on your own in any way you choose to play with portals into the soul. The first path I'd offer is the idea that you can choose to approach this. I'm actually going to offer 7 paths that you can choose to apply in the way you engage and explore the content we're developing. Path 1 is the path of the search for understanding, the search for truth. When I was in my early 20s, this was the most prime inquiry line in my life. I wanted to understand the world. I wanted to understand how things work. I found that most of what was offered by way of explanation, scientific explanation, the historic explanation, the general popular explanation, most of it felt insufficient and not very satisfying. And that was very much the driving inquiry for me in the early 20s, and it's still very, very alive 40 and more years later. And so I'd say the first path you can take is read the content, engage with what's being offered as part of your inquiry and your search for truth. And I offered as much in the preamble, which is, don't take anything I say as truth in any automatic way until such time as you're able to validate and test it for yourself that it actually works for you inside out. So that would be the first path. The second way to potentially explore this, and this may be a way to address your question, Kiriki, about revitalizing our souls and the sense of aliveness, is use the work inside your own, we each have our own way of a search for some kind of a belonging. That became a primary dimension for me in my late 20s. Obviously, there was a communal search. I was searching for love. I was searching to build my family. So all those dimensions were part of that late 20s quest for me, which is available for anybody here, because some people will come into the inquiry, into the soul, by saying, well, I'd like to find the other people that are asking similar questions, and actually be in a circle or a pod with others. And even more than the specific mechanical or esoteric appreciation of one dimension or another of the soul, it's actually the being together in a circle of soul inquiry, where the deeper, most active need is being answered. So I'd say that's the second way one can choose to engage with this work. The third path is the path of self-impact, the search for self-impact, which is another way of saying the search to find your voice. That became for me very central, very active in my mid to late 30s. I already had a family. I was already entertaining all sorts of powerful ideas and thoughts, but I felt that I was the bottleneck. I was the gap. There was these great ideas and perhaps even experiences, but unless I could actually concretize it in my own experience in a way that will unlock a deeper appreciation of self, not just in a psychological sense, but in a more fully embodied sense of my meaning, my purpose of my life, the meaning of this life, and in a way that will release in me more of a self-empowered agentic capacities, then I felt that the knowledge and the ideas will be very attractive in their high form, but there will be a missing link. It would almost be like a ladder with few of the upper rungs on the top, but I would be missing some of the rungs in the middle and or at the bottom. So the search for self-impact became central for me in the late 30s. And I think it's very viable and valid to approach this work by way of saying, okay, I'm going to read about the soul. I'm going to be engaged in this conversation. And I will do so to understand better who I am, what can I do, what is this moment for me in my life, and be very concrete with these questions rather than approach them as a mental or intellectual or just a philosophical pursuit. The fourth way, and obviously by now I'm revealing that I traced that through my own experience. So for me, the early to mid 40s was when I said, okay, you have to get serious about life. You have to produce some practical results. You have these great ideas and great thoughts, but unless you can actually impact other people in a meaningful way that will also then bring results to your endeavors, then something big is going to be missing. I also needed to answer the material question to support my family. So all of that came together, and I would encourage that there is a way to engage with this content, with this work, into portals into the soul by saying, okay, where am I in my life? What is it I'm doing? Can I engage with these deep questions, deep inquiries, but refuse to let them just remain abstract or high and lofty, and instead seek to find a way to use the knowledge, engage the exploration in a pragmatic, concrete way that will produce for you personal results, whatever it is you do. You may be leading a team. You may be coaching people. You may be in the space of healing. You may be in any one of the many different possible professional pursuits, and you may want to bring this consideration into the work you do. Perhaps you are in the classroom with a group of students, either elementary or further more advanced in people's educational journey, what might be a way to bring the awareness of the soul to how do you lead a class of people? That is an inquiry that has almost disappeared from the world in this highly technological, automated, modern, postmodern environment. And I'm proposing that there is much that can be brought from this work into the classroom or anything you do. The fifth, please.
Yeah, just to comment on that, because we were talking about, Kyriaki used the phrase that the soul is kind of a woo-woo territory, but I think there's something incredibly practical about it, because it is a life companion for us, and it does nudge us, and it does listen to us. And in what you're saying, it seems like that would be a perfect thing. This isn't some abstract philosophical treatise. This should almost be taught to a child in first grade, and to have this understanding and carry it through their life so that they're never apart from their soul. Just as a way to describe how natural this really ought to be to us. It's not something that we embark on when we're 50 or more because we've answered all the other questions, but it's something that we should never be apart from, never be away from. So I just wanted to put that in, just kind of highlight what you were saying there.
And exactly, Peter, in actuality, we are never apart from our soul, but I know what you mean. You mean that in the sense of being connected in yourself with your larger potential. And if you say, well, what is the biggest problem that people have, or one of the biggest problems that people have at this time, is how fragmented, how frazzled we often get through life with devices and technology. And one of the things the soul wants to do is to bring you back into wholesomeness, to help you integrate as a whole person. And for me, that became path number 6, which was that where in my mid to late 40s, I became very interested in to transcend and include whatever it was that I was able to produce in terms of results that in the late 40s. I wanted to then get to a point where I will not be defined or identified with my results. And so that became, for me, the search for transcendence. And one can engage with the inquiry of the soul as the path of transcendence. And then what followed the search for transcendence was the search for integration, because I realized that the fact that I was able to transcend one view or one dimension of me and integrate different dimensions of life and develop a larger capacity to hold more multifaceted picture was not necessarily a guarantee that I actually integrated that in who I was becoming in terms of my character formation. And so for me, the path of integration, which is the path I'm still on, became central in my mid-50s. And I'd encourage that there is a way to engage with this work. And you're suggesting, Peter, well, we should actually introduce our toddlers and youngsters in school to the fact that this journey they have embarked on, being a human in the planetary experience, is going to be a journey where they will time and again go to new places, experience new parts of themselves, and actually being human means to do the work of integration. And if we introduce that earlier in life, in elementary school, then perhaps they could have happier and healthier life, and they potentially could have easier journey than the journey I've been on, because I wish somebody would tell me, hey, you're a 7 year old, and guess what? You're going to be on a journey of integration, and that they found a way with the simple language and experiential way you'd curate this idea for a 7 or a 9-year-old through playing games, and you'll demonstrate to them that integration is actually the most natural thing they already do anyway, but will place it inside a context in such a way that they will have a perennially an etched awareness that this journey, the human journey, is going to be a journey of integration. So that for me is path number 6. Path number 7, which is the path I'm on now, and very much where this body of work is emerging from, is the path of the ensoulment journey, the ensoulment and the spiritualization journey. We will get into this a lot more as we proceed later in the work. In a simple way, if you like, the idea of the ensoulment journey is the birthing you can now generate in your own life to soul properties that you choose to bring to anything you choose to engage with. In other words, we're not just participant in a material universe, we have the capacity to spiritualize this world and ensoul this world through the conscious awareness and the potentized attention that we bring to what we do in life. And another way to, if you like, describe that is consecrating or re-enchanting the world with the sacred that we have lost in over the last several centuries, but not by going back in time to the Middle Ages, but finding a way to unlock and enliven in a whole new way who we truly are as humans. So that's the promise of where this journey is heading. Different people will describe it in different words through different language as a result of different backgrounds. So, and all of which is welcome. I'd offer that as a starter way to consider, you're welcome to approach this through the search for truth and understanding. Number 2, through the desire to find belonging, be with others. Number 3, to search to find a way of accessing your voice, self-impact. Number 4, the search to produce practical results in your life. Number 5, transcending whatever practical results you've created so you're not identified with one dimension. And then move into number 6, which is more the journey of integration. And number 7, the journey of ensoulment and spiritualization. And one of the thoughts that I have, Peter, is that when we regather on March 23rd for a Portals event, we can actually walk through these 7 paths if there is an interest. And I can demonstrate a way or a starter with each one of those, how one can work with the content. Because one of the things I feel very strongly about this, I don't want people to just take this as a theory or as a concept. I'd like for anybody that is interested to engage with this as a live exploration of your own quest, your own journey to come into contact with your soul. And so what we're going to do, we're going to be offering some ways and means and practices to actually work with the content in each of those 7 paths, and probably more by the time we regather in March. So I'd offer that. And inside that hierarchy, perhaps there are several clues or ways to pick up the deep concern you expressed about younger generation, the anxiousness we see with younger generation, the never before in history sense of anxiety and suicidal tendencies with younger people. I'd say maybe the last thing in this context, which is, for me, the reason this work is emerging now is very much in the context of this time. There's just no way I would be embarking on this, some would say, audacious or ambitious endeavor outside of the bigger context that's unfolding for humanity at this time of crisis, a time where we're partly described as the great untethering. Why great untethering? Because we pride ourselves for the 400 years journey from the Enlightenment, for the capacity we've developed with the primacy of the intellect to develop objective knowledge. And so we've developed those extraordinary capacities. But along the journey, in several other ways, we got untethered from who we are at the level of the soul. So sometime when you talk about the soul, you'd be dismissed, and somebody would say, well, this is primitive, or this is nonsensical. You're asking us to go back to the Middle Ages. No, we are asking, is there a way in this modern, postmodern time to reintegrate knowledge, all that we've been gifted by from the sciences and everything else that came to us in the modern world? Is there a way to engage with all that we know from an even bigger perspective in ourselves, one that is prepared to re-engage and bring back into the picture the soul? And that's partly what this work is going to attempt to do.
I love the way that you keep referring to it as the journey of Eve, because it is indeed a journey. And it's, if each one of us can pick up little insights along the way, those aha moments, they really can be life-changing. So it's a wonderful journey. I was wondering, can we address some of these comments? There's some interesting comments coming up. Let's see. We have time for that now? Is this a good space for that?
Please, let's, this is what we're here for, so please.
Great. There's a wonderful little comment here from Liz. I was taught that I do not have a soul. I am the soul. Once I identify myself as soul, my relationship is constant and throughout.
Yeah, it's a wonderful comment, and is also a true observation at one level. At another level, you are the soul itself. What we're proposing here is not a singular entity, but rather a multiplicity, a whole cosmology of qualities and capacities and dimensions. And you have the capacity to bring to life different facets or different dimensions of the soul. And over time, we will cultivate some of those practices, and either in the interior by way of meditating and contemplating there, and also by way of how it can impact the interpersonal arena. I would say that the nudge with which, the orientation with which chapter 1 is offering the beginning of the journey is Liz, one where there is an invitation to discover the more that you are as a soul, the more multifaceted soul that you are. And again, don't take my word for it, but play with this idea, not just as a concept, but in the way of how you experience your life. Are you indeed one thing as the soul, or are you a multiplicity? And if you are a multiplicity in your soul, what does it say about your soul, and what does it say about the configuration of being human, and potentially what does it say about how we are meant to learn, develop, and evolve? So wonderful question. I'd offer that as a starter. And Lisa, please, by all means, read others. Again, my approach to this work is I'm not here to answer any question as an end stop. We are together in a shared inquiry, shared contemplation about the mysteries of the soul. And one of the core processes and inner modalities that I've cultivated over the last 40 years has been the way of working with running inquiry, running contemplation. So for me, each one of those, they offer the next unfolding of a contemplation rather than an end stop. And I would never attempt to offer an answer as an end stop, at least not in this side of the inquiry. So please.
Yeah, and we're each going to have our own idea about the soul, and this journey is helping to expand for my life how I think about my soul. So it's an expansion, as you're saying, Aviv, of what that soul is, and that each one of us can have our own little ideas, not little, big ideas about the soul. There's a wonderful comment or a question here from Transcendent Minds. Am I saying that right? Is the soul an emergent phenomena born from the intricate interplay of underlying processes embodying intelligence, consciousness, and self-awareness within the human framework? Let me read that again. That's a big question. Is the soul an emergent phenomena born from the intricate interplay of underlying processes embodying intelligence, consciousness, and self-awareness within the human framework?
Yeah, this is beautiful, and one of the reasons it's a beautiful question is because in many ways that is the question I'm now working on in approaching chapter 5. And so just to put it in context, there is this idea, and possibly one of the most contentious debates in scientific philosophical circles is indeed about the nature of consciousness. So those that see the world through reductionist, materialist, scientific point of view, a reductionist scientific point of view, would argue that what we experience as consciousness is an emergent phenomenon that is made possible through the complexification of the processes of life. And the most reductionist view, therefore, of consciousness will offer the idea that the mind is what the brain does. And therefore, the mind and consciousness is something that's emergent from the physical universe and the biological universe. And so the question is whether that is the way to view consciousness. And then there is going to be a question of, so therefore, where would you put the quality of the soul? Now, I'm not going to place myself right now on that side of the debate or on the other side. And some of the more extended panpsychic point of view of that will say that, well, there is actually a way in which you could describe a degree of elementary consciousness, even down to the quantum field, to the smallest particles, in that the smallest particles, they have a way of knowing whether they feel repelled or compelled to draw near or draw away from another particle. You could argue, and some argue, that reflects a degree of elementary consciousness that appears in the universe, even in the material world. So put that on one side of looking at consciousness as a phenomenon that's arising from the material universe, and then put on the other side a whole range of spiritual, theological, philosophical point of views that will consecrate the universe as something that is the embodiment or the expression, that what we see in the universe is the already manifestation. Physical universe itself is a manifestation of consciousness. So that is how broad the continuum of point of views in these most contentious debates, with many other point of views in the middle. And what I'm trying to do in chapter 5, which I plan not to speak about at all, but I've been prompted to by this question, is to not answer those very smart people, perhaps smarter than, not perhaps, most definitely smarter than I am, who are describing those different point of views. And there is a particular mission in portals into the soul, which is to journey into these inquiries without closing the conversation, but rather in a way that one can discover for themselves, for ourselves, engage with the phenomenology of the inquiry at the deepest level, and begin to play and work with and converse with the soul, such that we can reclaim knowledge not as a conceptual abstract set of ideas, but knowledge with feelings, knowledge with experience, knowledge with embodiment. All that is part of what we are trying to invite to the inquiry of the soul. Now, there are many other questions here, Lisa. Where would you want to go
Let's
next?
take a comment in this idea of the many different lives that live within from Nigel from Ireland. We are constituted or host to many lives, each with its own purpose. How do we differentiate between them, or are they connected so intricately that many names become one? Good question, Nigel.
So how do we differentiate between those different lives, or are they connected so intricately that many names become one? Well, it's a question that has its own answer, kind of a thing. And what we want to do here, very much as suggested in the comment below, is to allow the questions to survive the answers, to allow an active genesis of discovery. Very nice comment. We want this to become psychoactive. We want this to become participative, and we want this conversation not to end when we land the conversation shortly. So all those contemplations are absolutely on, including this idea of, are you indeed a multiplicity? And is this multiplicity something that's arising inside a greater unified one? And if there is a greater unified one, how would you characterize it? And when you come to characterize it, do you describe it once again as a trilogy? As often we see in some of the perennial and wisdom traditions, they all, in one way or another, sooner or later, rethread through some kind of a trilogy. So again, wonderful questions, and we have time to embark and get to these later in the journey. And so I know we haven't had a chance yet to hear from Patrick. Is there anything, Patrick, you want to bring into the table at this point?
We've covered so much territory. It's been fantastic. I would just want to remind people that if they're really enjoying this kind of conversation and dialogue, is that if they go to the Portal's website, we're looking to set up little discussion groups and pods to work into this material. So people, if they're enjoying this, they may want to continue and get together with other people and keep talking and keep opening it up and keep discussing. And we're really welcome to hear from more people.
Thank you, Patrick, very much so. So once again, this is not me establishing a new dogma about the soul. This is, if anything, all of us inviting a shared, mutualized inquiry where we can be in this pursuit and part of the instinct, part of the intuition that's driving this at this time is the degree of torment and chaos and confusion in the world, and the sense that we are not going to be able to solve the kind of crises we see all over the world with the same tool set that created these problems. And I'm obviously paraphrasing on this insight from Uncle Albert, our friend Einstein. And so the sense that we can be in a shared inquiry about the soul, that there isn't a one dogmatic Eastern or Western or any other catechism that you need to enroll in to be part of the conversation, because guess what? You showed up here with a soul, And our premise and what we're describing in chapter 1 is you showed up with a soul because you need a mediator, you need a facilitator, you need some kind of a bridging media to help you as a spiritual being that appeared in the flesh, in the planetary experience, help you navigate the bewildering experience that human life in a postmodern world is in the human model. And we are suggesting that the soul has this capacity. It has the language of the spirit on the one hand, and also it has the know-how, the intelligence loom, the fivefold and the sevenfold intelligence loom to manage a planetary experience, all of which we will get to over time. So how are we doing? I think we're just about coming to the hour mark, and it's time for me to bring it back to you, Peter. And any comments, any thoughts before we bring it to end today?
Yeah, well, it's been great. It's been great to dig into this territory and have all these questions. As I said at the beginning, we're from portalsofperception.org, the website, and this work into the soul is a new work for 2024. But the site itself is very much into these ideas of where are we as a species, as humans? How can we, through conversation and interaction and engagement, move the evolutionary story along? So I can just show our website here. Here's the homepage, portalsofperception.org. Where does the future come from? Does evolution just happen, or are we co-creators in its unfolding? So we look at these questions, but the co-creators is not just as individuals, but as community. And so we're looking to find this community of people who are interested in this. This is a new work of ours, internal human orchestra work into how to balance, bring healing and harmony to stressful lives. And so we're just embarking on that. We did want to point out our research pods sign up. So you can just go to the homepage and click the link to sign up. The beauty of the research pods is that these live events are great. And we hope to do lots more of them, but we also want to, those pods will be Zoom meetings, so we can see everyone's face and be more interactive and have a real conversation. So, I would put that in. And again, thank everyone for joining us today, and keep an eye out for our live streams in the future.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Very enjoyable. Thank you.